Back here on Motorsports Today, I'm Eddie Kalegi. Well, we are just a couple of days away from the Indianapolis 500's 109th running, and already plenty of storylines, drama at Penske, the first rookie pole sitter in 4+ decades, and to help break it all down, someone who's been at the Speedway all through the month of May, co-host of Unverified, host of the Tony D podcast, Tony Donohue. Thanks again for joining us on Motorsports Today.
Eddie, it's race week, although the weather's not really cooperating. But, you mentioned it. When it comes to storylines, I can't remember going into a 500 with so many storylines, whether it's on the track or off the track.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're going to have to start off the track because of everything that happened Sunday. And I don't think anybody could have imagined that when those two Penske cars of Newgarden and Power were pulled off the Fast 12 grid, that it would spiral quite like it did. Ultimately, INDYCAR making the decision to send those two cars to the back, and then Penske as a team making a decision to make some wholesale leadership changes on Wednesday morning. The dismissal of team president Tim Cindric, managing director Ron Rzuski, and general manager Kyle Moyer. So, as someone who has been at the track for all of this playing out and in the city of Indianapolis the last few days, just talk about the general shockwaves that these last 72 hours have kind of sent through the paddock.
Yeah, we started to get wind of it, as you mentioned, on Sunday when the cars were brought out to pit road and it was mentioned on Fox, and the rumors started kind of spreading through the paddock. And then it was like, okay, what exactly are they doing? What's, the attenuator? What's that? It's a piece that the average fan, me, I wouldn't, if you would have showed me, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. But it seemed like there were some teams that noticed it. And there are some teams that went to IndyCar tech inspection and said, hey, let's just say if this were to happen, what would it be? What would there be consequences? Would that be illegal? And now, Eddie, do I think everybody's stretching the rules a little bit? Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with this circumstance, with Penske, it's their second time in 15 months they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. It's the second time that they've gone into the month of May with some sort of advantage, whether that's, I think the advantage at St. Pete was a lot more because you had to push the pass and you're using it on restarts. I get that. This, I mean, if you ask somebody at Penske, they're probably going to tell you it may be worth a tenth of a mile an hour, may not be. If you ask somebody at Ganassi or somebody at Andretti, they might say, oh, no, that's worth a mile and a half. Well, the biggest issue with all this is you're going through it, and it's hard for me to believe that just two of the cars had it. It was definitely all three. But then you get the McLaughlin crash on Sunday, which, for lack of a better term, just kind of saved him, right? Like, if I feel like if he would have qualified and not wrecked that car, it would have been caught on to.
Yeah.
With that being said, he's still going to start 10th. I thought the sanctioning that IndyCar and Doug Bowles came down with and moving those two cars to the back of the field was certainly warranted. But if you needed more proof in the pudding, there's this brand new, incredible museum at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that has Joseph's last year's car in it. Well, let's just walk on over there and see what that looks like. See, is it the same thing? And it was literally right there in plain sight to be seen that the part of the attenuator that was modified and kind of messed with was right there for everybody to see.
Yeah, and it's just hard to believe that it spiraled the way it did for Penske, and a team that started with a front row lockout last year, now going to have one driver with the repairs and two others coming all the way from the back of the field. But Tony, let's transition to the front of the field. We talked on the show at length on Monday about what an accomplishment it was for Robert Shwartzman, Team Prema, first time on an oval for both driver and team to grab the pole. Also, Takuma Sato starting second. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, well documented the troubles they've had in qualifying the last couple of years, and Sato wrecked his car in the open test, New Dallara, and was able to get things done and start second. But the real question here, as trimmed out as those two cars were for qualifying with Schwartzman's inexperience, Sato a veteran, of course, how well do you see those two faring on race day?
Man, that interesting turn one on lap one is going to be something to watch because you've got so many cars that are good and fast starting towards the back. You've got a rookie pole sitter in Robert Schwartzman. What a run that he was on. I mean, absolutely stunning. I don't think there was more people predicting that he would get bumped from the show than there was that he would make the top 12, let alone the top 6, and certainly qualifying on pole position. And look, I understand, people are going to say, oh, well, the 3 Penskes were out of it. And, but he still beat Alex Palou. He still beat Pato O'Ward and Takuma Sato. As far as Sato goes, my biggest concern is this. I think Sato's a generational driver. We're going to look back in 10, 20, 30 years and just remember how great Takuma Sato actually was. We go back to 2012 and the crash going into the final lap, into turn 1 on lap 200. You think about his 2 wins. He was 3rd here a couple years ago as well. I think it was at 2019, possibly. My concern with Sato is just how hard it is to win as a one-off. And he still is a Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing driver, which hasn't done too many great things over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm a little bit concerned off his pit stop crew. Maybe they move some guys over from Devlin or Louis Foster to give them a better chance. Those guys that have made pit stops during green flag action. And then we're going to see what Pato O'Ward can do. I mean, he's the heartbreak kid, right? He was 2nd last year. He was 2nd a few years ago. To Ericsson, he was fighting for the lead in 2024 or 2023 before he ended up in the fence. He was right there last year. I mean, I think Pato is right now your favorite, but as we know, anything can happen throughout that field.
100%. You never know what's going to happen in the Indy 500. And I'd say qualifying, not just because of the rookie pole sitter, this whole first week was especially unpredictable because, Tony, it's the first time that they've run on the speedway, on the oval with the hybrid. And that hybrid boost in terms of when you incorporated it in qualifying appeared to throw a whole other loop into what's already a very fascinating weekend of setting the grid for the 500. Now, some people wondering if perhaps the hybrid, Marcus Armstrong talked about the balance that you're trying to figure out with the hybrid. Maybe if that had anything to do with the volume of crashes that we saw from Friday through Sunday last weekend. Your thoughts on the impact the hybrid has had so far and will continue to have on Sunday?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because especially in qualifying runs, it seemed like everybody was using it really on that last lap. We saw a few drivers, including Takuma Sato, use a little bit of it on lap 1 at regen. It's going to be interesting to see how it fares in the race. Unfortunately, we might be talking about a hybrid issue costing somebody the win, which is crazy to think about, but that's all it's done. I mean, I said this on my podcast the other day. When it comes to the hybrid, it's been more of a headache than really anything else. I mean, it cost Palou last year in Milwaukee. It cost Scott Dixon last year in Mid-Ohio. And it was something that was brought in to kind of keep Honda happy and hopefully to keep Honda in the sport. And right now we're at a point where Honda's not happy with anything between the 2 Penske cheating scandals, between this. I think, Honda probably had a lot to say in like, hey, they need to move these guys to the back. Also, when it comes to what we're going to see, like, why are the people that are still in place at Penske and have been a part of this and knew about the cheating still employed? And then obviously we saw that come out earlier today where Ron Rzuski, Tim Cindric, and Kyle Moyer have lost their jobs.
Now, when you look at this from a fan's perspective, of course, the month of May is always a big deal in Indianapolis, but you get the grandstand sellout, you get the blackout lifted in central Indiana. As someone who has been boots on the ground these last few weeks, could you talk about just the excitement level from a fan's perspective, in spite of the hybrid and the Penske scandal, in terms of just the general fan excitement leading into Sunday?
Yeah, I think your general casual fan going into this weekend, hey, I'm going to watch. I go to the Indianapolis 500, but I don't really pay too much attention to the rest of the series. Or, hey, I like to be out there because my family goes and it's a social gathering. I think those type of people really will have zero interest in the hybrid, have zero interest in what happened with Penske. Now, they may say, oh, well, why is this guy starting 33rd and he's faster than 17 other cars in the field? That's certainly a possibility. As far as the hardcore fans go, there's just so much unknown. There's been some pretty bad crashes. I mean, I said this the other day. I said I've gone to the medical center way too many times.
Yeah.
I've been at this medical center way too many times, and I look at a lot of cars starting in the back of the field that are fast. A lot of moves are going to be made. And every driver I've talked to, as far as how can you pass with this hybrid, has told me restarts and the initial start of the race are super crucial to being able to make passes and move up. So, I say this every year, and maybe this year's a little bit different, but I'm still stick by it based on the analytics of it. You got to be in the first 4 rows to win this race. You got to start up front because somebody is going to lose it on pit road. Somebody's going to have their day ruined by somebody else, and somebody's going to be a part of a crash that they had no business being in. It was just the luck of the circumstances. So there is a lot that goes into this to be perfect over 500 miles. And I think we've got about 6 drivers I think legitimately have a shot to win it. And if we're talking about, oh, well, IMS picks the winner. If IMS certainly picks the winner, I'm not picking a Penske car this weekend. That would be karma that would be served if they certainly do not win with any other 3 cars.
Well, you mentioned 6 drivers, Tony. I know you're a busy man. Before I let you go, who are some names that you're looking out for this weekend? Of course, plenty of storylines and maybe a couple of drivers that the casual fan might not think of as a favorite, but should be kept on their radar on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Pato Award is obviously a favorite, as is Alex Palou, based on what Palou's done. However, Palou's never won on an oval. So, that's one of those things where it's like, okay, can he do it? Marcus Ericsson won on his first oval at the Indianapolis 500 in 2022. Rossi did it. Buddy Rice did it, I believe. So it has Ari Luyendyk back in 1990. It has been done. I usually fade the pole sitter, and I just don't know if Prema and Shwartzman are built for the 500-mile overhaul. We're going to look at a guy like Scott Dixon, and everything that's been said about Scott Dixon is, oh, this is a guy that has done everything in motorsports, made the most starts, led the most laps at the Indianapolis 500, and he's only got 1 win. Can Scott Dixon get it done? I'm looking at a guy like Marcus Ericsson, who's been consistently good this entire week. When it comes to the race car, when it comes to qualifying, I think his draw certainly was the best thing that happened to him this month because, going out first, he had a distinct advantage. So I'm interested to see what he can do. Somebody like Felix Rosenqvist in the Creed car, I think the casual fan is probably going to adapt to seeing that car out there. Felix, over his career, has qualified well, but hasn't raced as well as he's qualified. So that's certainly an issue for me. Can Scott McLaughlin do it? But there's 2 drivers I'm looking at. I'll give you a dark horse, and it's Christian Lundgaard. Christian Lundgaard and an Aaron McLaren Chevy starting 8th. He's been fast at the 500 for the equipment that has been provided for him. He started towards the back in the Rahal cars the last couple of years, and he's drove his way inside of the top 15, the top 12. I think he's learned a lot of his racecraft being back there kind of in the scrum. And I'll give you Alexander Rossi. I mean, Rossi has been quietly confident all month. He told me on Wednesday of last week, he thought he had the 4th best car in the field. He told me the other day he thinks it's now up to the 2nd or the 3rd. I like the quiet confidence that we've seen out of Alexander Rossi over the last week.
And we have seen Ed Carpenter Racing quietly succeed in this race and be very competitive as well. So should be fun to watch. Well, Tony Donohue, been there all month with David Land, the Unverified crew. Tony, enjoy the Indy 500. Thanks for joining us here on Motorsports Today.
Anytime. Enjoy the race coming up on Sunday.